watching News at Prime. Let's bring you this conversation now. The Madlanga Commission today expected to hand over its interim report to President Cyril Ramaphosa. The inquiry looking into claims of infiltration and political interference within law enforcement. It follows the explosive claims by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi in the month of July. The inquiry has heard testimony from several witnesses, including Mkhwanazi himself and the crime intelligence head, Dumisani Khumalo, since starting its work back in September. Let's discuss now what we have heard so far, but importantly, the decision to withhold the interim report from the public. And let's discuss this with Accountability Now, Advocate Paul Hoffman, leading that particular organization. Good evening to you, Advocate. Good to talk to you. Let's start with the decision by the President to essentially withhold the interim report from public consumption. And he says this is to prevent any possible expectations that may not be met at this time, because some witnesses could still go back to give further testimony. Do you think the reasoning around this is good enough?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity, Ollie, and good afternoon, good evening to your viewers. I think we need to go back to the terms of reference, because it's very clear that this commission did not start when it was anticipated it would start. There were problems setting it up and finding a venue and capacitating its staff and so on. And as you said in the intro, it only really started in September, even though the Gazette that created it was at the end of July. So everything has been moved out. There was to be an interim report on the 31st of October, and that report is now due today. There's absolutely nothing in the terms of reference that obliges the Commission to make the interim report or even the final report public, but it is incumbent upon it to make the final report available to the Speaker of Parliament. Now, part of what they are trying to do there, quite separately from working out what is going on with the application of the legislation and the policies that relate to the subject matter of the inquiry, which essentially is the corruption of the criminal justice administration and the syndicates that seem to be responsible for putting politicians into their pockets. The evidence on that is still incomplete. The Minister of Justice, the Minister of Police, Senzo Mkhulu, who is right at the center of this complaint by General Mkhwanazi, has yet to complete his evidence. And there was a pretty testy exchange between the evidence leaders and his counsel about re-examining on evidence that hadn't even been led yet. So all of that suggests that it is early days to dig into the factual aspects of the matter, whereas on the question of the legislation, the policies, the institutional arrangements that have failed to prevent the crime syndicates from assuming the role which we've heard they have assumed, none of that is yet at a state where a finalized report and both sides of the equation can really be weighed and tested by the commissioners in their report. So I'm not surprised that that it is being treated as advice to the President at this stage. All commissions of inquiry are created to give the executive branch of government advice on detailed factual questions and legal questions, which is really impossible for the President to do himself because he's got a country to run.
You mentioned the terms of reference, and based on those, nothing stops the commission at whichever point that it feels necessary to do this, and that is to refer some people for prosecution if it deems that indeed they have something to answer to. And I'm going to mention specific individuals, and you'll tell me whether we are at any point where these individuals could possibly be referred based on the testimony they have given, based on testimony that other people have said about them. And I'm thinking here at the top of my head, Julius Mkhwanazi, this is the deputy head of the Metro Police in the Ekurhuleni municipality. Whether you talk Dr. Imogen Mashazi, this was the municipal manager within that municipality. Bheki Cele is another interesting candidate here. These three individuals, based on what has been said about them, do you believe that there's anything that could strengthen the hand of the commission to say, we think that there is something important for you to answer to, and therefore we're referring you for criminal prosecution?
Yes, I think it is possible in relation to the first two, the municipal manager and the other Mkhwanazi, the Julius Mkhwanazi, to formulate charges of corruption against them. With Bheki Cele, the person who has implicated him is a high security awaiting trial prisoner at the moment, and there will be questions about the credibility of the evidence that he has given. So Bheki Cele may continue to be the cat with 9 lives in the hat and not be cornered by Cat Nhlanhla. So those three are probably quite good examples of why different things can happen to different people, and a lot will depend on what the Minister of Police, on gardening leave at the moment, says when he completes his evidence. And of course, there is the possibility, let's put it this way, there is the possibility that the interim report will be used as the occasion for explaining to the President that the existing legislative framework, institutional arrangements, do not accord with the orders that were made in the Glenister litigation way back in 2011 and 2014, which boiled down to a requirement that the anti-corruption machinery of state in South Africa must be housed in a suitable institution that is outside executive control. We don't have that. The NPA is part of the Criminal Justice Administration, has to do the heavy lifting on the prosecution, but it is under the final responsibility of the Minister of Justice. Its accounting officer is the Director General of Justice. The Minister must concur in all policies that the NPA makes. These are not the features of a body outside executive control that the law requires. And it may be that it's a good thing to keep this out of the public domain until the final report is completed, and that won't be 6 months after kickoff, as the Gazette anticipated. It's going to take a lot longer than that to dig through the available evidence that we know about already. And so I'm not perturbed by the decision to go slowly. I'm interested to hear what the Commission says about the adequacy of current legislation, policies, and institutional arrangements, preventing corruption in particular, and in general, the collapse of the capacity of the state to deal effectively with corruption in South Africa.
Yeah. Advocate Hoffman, I'm fortunate in that I'm talking to a trained lawyer, And I want to put to you the question or the charge of perjury. How serious is it? And here's the reason I'm asking that question. The performance of Brown Mkhwanazi under oath, it has to be revisited because the commissioners themselves had to tell him that you are tailoring your evidence right now. And I do think that at some point he may have considered, indeed, that his evidence simply, in some instances, did not stand up to scrutiny. How serious is this? And could he be made an example of for lying under oath?
Yes, well, we tried to make an example of Botabili Dlamini, who was indeed charged with perjury and got a rap over the knuckles for it. I think that Brown Mkhwanazi has got much bigger problems than a perjury charge, and we await with interest what the report, the final report, says about his very, very underwhelming display under cross-examination by the evidence leader, Matthew Chaskelson, who had a field day showing that Brown Mkhwanazi was really quite a stranger to the truth, in spite of the fact that he was giving evidence under oath before the commission. He appears on the face of it to be guilty of perjury simply because of the contradictory answers that he gave.
Advocate Paul Hoffman, thank you very much for your time, helping us to revisit some of what has come out of the Madlanga inquiry. It is on a break at the moment, and they will resume in the new year. But important today, why we're discussing it is because they are handing over an interim report to the desk of the president, and it is only for the eyes of the president.